Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever and whenever you're listening. In this episode, I chat with Angela Siddall. Ange is Senior Global Director of Talent Attraction, Experience and Inclusion at Veeam. Now, Veeam is a fast-paced software company that's a leader in backup solutions that deliver cloud data management. So pace is important in a company like Veeam. And we talk about what Ange has been up to at Veeam and if employer branding is too slow for a fast-paced world. Let's get on with the chat. Good morning, Ange. How are you doing?
Good morning, Chris. I'm very well. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. The sun is shining after a few rainy days, so let's say maybe summer's returned.
I think that will be wishful thinking, but we can only dream.
Indeed. So, what part of the world are you semi-locked down in?
In a place called Surrey. So it's not South Africa, but it's just in lockdown in Surrey, in the countryside with lots of trees and nature around. So I think that's been something that's kind of kept me going over this time, that's for sure.
Yeah, good stuff. And how have you found it all, kind of working majority, if not 100% remotely?
Well, the job that I took 18 months ago is actually a working from home role. So I was really prepared in my life and ready to try it and give that a go. But I think lockdown's been a whole new level with having a little one at home, which I'm sure you understand, 4-year-old.
Yeah.
And and I think also just we get a little bit of variety normally in our company with a bit of travel, and we always get together as a team. So even though you work from home, you have those moments which are kind of, really fun and special, and you get to sort of spend time with other humans. But this time has been obviously a long stretch. So it's been tough, but it's also been, I'm very grateful for many other reasons and other things, because we actually have sort of come out the other side still intact, which is good. And obviously I'm very sensitive that it's not the case for everyone.
No, absolutely.
How have you been?
Yeah, good. Well, remote working's been pretty standard, really. So not much change, really. So no, it's we've got the technology to do so much more than we were able to do, say, 10 years ago. So it's I think all things considered.
I think it's given the industry and businesses a big push actually to realize that this can actually happen from home. It's actually very possible.
6 years and 6 months, that kind of thing. It's amazing how things have changed.
Absolutely.
So let's start off with just telling listeners a bit about yourself and what you've done before and what your role is at the moment.
Sure. So I have been in the space of employer brand engagements, recruitment, whichever sort of angle you want to look at it, recruitment marketing for almost 20 years now. I have worked in a mixture of agencies. I've worked for two of the biggest agencies in the UK, and I've spent some time in-house as well. So I went from agency side having a variety of different roles, from more client-facing, more internal, working in creative departments, production departments, digital departments, and finally got to the client side, the client-facing side within agencies. So I feel from an agency perspective, I've had a real breadth of experience and had many, many roles within those companies. And then probably about 6 or 7 years ago, I decided to try in-house. So I went client side, and I worked for a big organization, a big corporate organization, 55,000 employees, and in the role of global employer branding. And most recently, I have come over to Veeam, Veeam Software, and I've been here for about 18 months. And I'm now in a sort of a medium-sized, 4,500 size business. And I look after global employer branding, global employee engagement, and diversity and inclusion for a tech company. So kind of a mixed bag, quite a mixed bag. Definitely lots of breadth of experience.
Definitely. Actually, when you talk about your role at Veeam, I think that shows actually how important employer brand is on touching many parts of the business. It's not just externally facing. It's fundamentally it's the massive part of it, which is internal as well, isn't it?
And I think I actually think that that's what's made this role in the company really special about the way they think about it. It's almost like you're not just invested in, putting on a face for the external world, but it's actually as invested in making the internal a reality and then showing the world. And it's quite a different slant because often those areas and businesses can be split up or they're looked after by different people with sort of different objectives and agendas.
Yeah.
But I think what makes Veeam special in that sense is the fact that they've looked at it as a joined up approach. It's whatever's going on inside, we're proud enough to talk about externally.
Yeah.
So that's, it's definitely been a unique way of looking at it.
So what does Veeam do?
So Veeam is, we would talk about ourselves in cloud data management. Our vision is to be the number one in cloud data management. And to sort of put it simply is, I think we would all agree, no matter what our experiences is with technology or businesses, how important data is to companies.
Sure. Yeah.
If your data is not available in any capacity, whether you're trying to make a purchase on Amazon or you're trying to, input details, or you want to use your online banking to pay someone, whatever the capacity is, if for some reason you can't access information and data, it can often turn customers away. So people will try and make a purchase. Oh, it didn't work first time. How annoying. And they might not come back. So this is a big deal for companies. So companies need to be able to make data available at all times, no matter what's going on in the back end. And they need to also be able to protect data from security threats. And so ultimately what Veeam does is has an incredibly clever, simple, reliable, easy to use product that allows that to happen and data to be available pretty much 24/7, 365. And that's the product that we sell. So as part of infrastructures for big companies or small companies, it's something it's almost something like you shouldn't even need to think about, but it's something that is so important that you have it right and that it can work. Yeah, so that's what we do. We have 375,000 customers around the world. And I'd say we're definitely on the way to becoming number one. We're already number one in EMEA and obviously working hard at the US and APJ as well.
Nice. And so see quite a bit about, follow what you guys do on social and, being on your website, and see quite a bit of mention of, I think it's actually in your signature as well. It's this Veeamazing. So what is Veeamazing?
I would describe Veeamazing as it's a way to sort of quantify a feeling or an energy or what is it that makes Veeam special? And it's a word that gets used, and it's something, it's not something that I came up with. It's something that I came into the business and they were using. And I think when you start at Veeam, you start to understand more and more about what it actually is. But obviously my job is also trying to get that out externally. So if I were to say to people within Veeam, what is Veeamazing? And you'll obviously have different answers because what makes people tick at Veeam is slightly different, but there are some commonalities. So people will say the things that make Veeam amazing or make Veeam special are about people, product, and culture. Those are the trio things. And I mean, we know this because we've done from surveys, I've done countless interviews with people around the business. The people that we work with, there's a very special sort of family feel, even though it's getting bigger, 4,500, it really does feel, like there's this one big team spirit working to the same goals. The product is incredible. It's one of the best products on the market. And when you're on the winning side with that also makes you feel like you're on a really good team and the culture. But I think it's more than that as well. I think what I would say as well is very, very special about Veeam is the growth trajectory that we've had. You think about 8 people who started this business 14 years ago, around a business idea, and it's now almost 4,500 employees, and it's $1 billion business. It's huge, massive. I mean, that sort of growth, that sort of trajectory, that sort of story. And I mean, whether you're talking about the increase of employees, the product services and how we've sort of evolved our offering, but also the, just the money that's been invested in this business over the time is such an incredible story. And I think we've also got a really great sense of purpose. I mean, as I was saying about what the product does earlier, it's something that's so vital to businesses, and it's something that's so important to businesses, and we get to be part of creating a great solution for companies in exactly that way.
Is that purpose kind of palpable when you speak to people? Is that kind of part of the amazing?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, again, it will come in many different forms to people. I mean, some people feel really close to it. I mean, you look at the product strategy team, the people that are creating the technology, the people who are on the forefront of selling the technology, that's the big part of our business. They will talk about, we don't just make technology because it's, we can think of a cool idea or a way to take it to the next level, but that constant communication with our customers and understanding how we can make it better and easier and work more for them, and having that purpose and that close connection to, customer feedback and what they're telling us, is central to how we look at how we do business and how we evolve our own strategies as we go.
And what kind of content has come from the amazing? Because you've talked about how you try and take what is very clearly kind of exists and lives within the organization and making that external. So what kind of content has come from the amazing?
I think it's storytelling. I think is always the first and the most important, and the one that's been the most interesting to definitely deliver. It's about speaking to people, really trying to understand where their experience, their background has taken them today, and how it's applied and how it's making Veeam a stronger business.
Yeah.
It's about getting every single aspect of, it's never just about the product, it's never just about the company, but it's all aspects of life and people bringing kind of their full selves to work, and how that journey has evolved at Veeam. Has been probably one of the highlights for me of content generation generally in the space, because that's what makes life interesting. And it's the people. If you go back to that first point that everyone will say, what's the amazing? It's the people. And you hear some of these stories, it just blows you away. So a lot of it's been about storytelling. And I think people like hearing about other people's stories. It makes them feel like they can relate to it. It makes them see that people are human, and people are very happy to talk about the things that they've succeeded at, but also their failures, and that's okay. And it's made us a better business, or it's made us a stronger individual. So definitely a lot of that. We've done a series recently, which I've really enjoyed, called Conversation from the Heart. It's one of our values. And we sit and do sort of recordings and just ask a variety of questions, things that we know are important or things that we're working on as a business, and we just get different takes on it. And it's pretty similar to this sort of conversation,
nice.
Getting opinions and views. And so that's probably been the heart of our content that we've generated, is around, film, video, storytelling. And obviously there's lots of other fun stuff that we do as well, because we do fun stuff internally. And the whole purpose of it is everything we put out there is a reflection of what's going on inside. So, we do some great things internally. Like we had a cooking challenge over lockdown, and, who could come up with the best recipes. We've got this mystery coffee idea where you meet different people for around the business every week for a quick 20-minute coffee. And you just chat. You've never met them before, and it's kind of like a blind date. But we've put a lot of these things in place, especially over lockdown, because it's been a really hard time for a lot of people. And then content is easy because it's just about telling people stuff that we've done, but also kind of hearing from other people, what ideas have they done and what have they talked about and what's worked for them and what could we be doing better. So it's very employee-led. It's very internally led on what's going on. But it's also, very authentic about letting our people tell our story and not letting us try and craft it too much on their behalf.
And you have lots of willing participants, I'm assuming.
Absolutely. That's one thing that really surprised me with getting to Veeam. And I think it's surprising because, Chris, you and I have worked on accounts in the past where you would kind of try and go into businesses and say, your people need to really help own this authentic content that's going externally. And sometimes it's quite difficult, and sometimes people don't even know where to start to get their business thinking like that or doing that. But when I arrived at Veeam, and I can't take credit for this at all, but it was in place. You talk about product, and I don't mean product as in what we sell, but I mean the product of a place to work.
Yeah.
That is authentically out for Veeam. People just share, they talk about it, they hashtag Veeamazing everything. And it's kind of interesting because it's coming into something that people just generally feel it, and they want to share about it, and they want to talk about it. I don't think for me it's not the challenge of coming in and going, we need to sort of get people to do this, because people are doing it. It's amazing. But maybe thinking a little bit about how do we structure it maybe differently, or focus it on some of the areas where we maybe need some more hiring or whatever, just kind of a bit more of a structure and a focus.
So that's interesting, actually, because I get the sense that there kind of isn't a hesitation from people. Is that because they're so naturally, because they are the people that they are. They're naturally keen to talk about things and talk about things they're passionate about, and there's no kind of, what's the word, kind of concern about, well, what if I say the wrong thing? So is there that, I suppose there's that thing about not being afraid to fail, which actually is connected with how you as a fast-paced business have grown so quickly.
Yeah.
What's that 1 billion, 1
Yeah.
billion mark?
Yeah. I mean, I think, and it's interesting, because when you come from businesses, or you've seen businesses run where that sense of failure is like, yes, I understand in some cases it could be really risky, but I've been around a lot of businesses where they're very, very cautious in this space. And I'm not saying that it's not a free fall either. You still got to have a sense of business decorum and everything about how you're going out there. But people are, I think the biggest thing I would say about it is that they're empowered. And they're passionate. I mean, it's not like you're trying to, you're not forcing it. So that's the first thing. I mean, if you have to force or try too hard to get people to feel comfortable to do it, that's really hard, because it's just not natural for everyone. And, you've also then got to give them a little bit of a sense of, I suppose, a little bit of direction and protection with it, but also acknowledging the fact that sometimes, but I think it's so many topics nowadays, people are sometimes too scared to say anything because they don't want to say the wrong thing. And it's just about, in some cases, being a little bit brave, and in some cases being okay to kind of be called out if maybe you say something that somebody doesn't agree with, but also to be protected and kind of have a safe space with it. But if the core of it is genuinely good, like again, I say the product, I don't mean the product, I mean a place to work. If it's that good and people are just talking about it naturally, it's kind of awesome, because you don't, it sells itself, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that very much taps into the whole thing that's being said. Got a lot on various podcasts, and articles and opinion pieces, and this podcast as well, about employer brand is something that already exists. It's the case of I suppose bottling that up in the right way and encouraging it more, and that's definitely what's happening with you guys. And Veeamazing is I think a very clear reflection of that situation at your company. And this, obviously, look, you've worked at large organizations, and then you moved to Veeam, where it'd be safe to say that because of the sector you're in, it's fast paced, and you've got this thing called Veeam speed.
Yeah.
What is Veeam speed?
Veeam speed it's about being quick. It's about being agile. It's about being, flexible in your approach. And it's about just getting things done and getting them done well and quickly. I think, the world of tech, we all know this world of tech is fast. And it's, if you're not, that's saying if you're not first, you're last. So it's the way that, businesses are thinking now. You have to be quick. I mean, I suppose the way the world's moving is just, I suppose quick. I can't really sort of stress that enough. But I think what's really interesting is, working with big organizations and for big organizations, you start to see that although there's an intent to be quick, and genuine intent, it's not always necessarily the case. You'll be in situations where getting sign off on something or making a decision or something will be forever, takes so much time. One thing that has really kind of surprised me, but in a very pleasant way, but sometimes a bit of a scary way, is the speed at which Veeam operates. It's almost like somebody thinks of an idea, somebody wants to do something, we go. We don't overthink it, we don't overanalyze it. We're okay, again, to fail sometimes. And I don't mean fail as in it's just like, cowboys or something.
Yeah, of course.
It's considered failure. I mean, sometimes you just go, you try something, did it work? Yes, it did. Cool, we learned something. If it didn't work, okay, cool, we learned something too. What's next? And so one thing I've been really I've actually really enjoyed it about Veeam is you come in and firstly, just the decisions get made quickly. You are empowered to make a decision. If it's your department in your area, make a decision and go with it. And, try and empower your teams to do the same. The minute you get slow is when you've got this hierarchy of you need to get 14 levels of approval to do anything or to move or to think or to react quickly.
Yeah.
And I think what Veeam's managed to do really well and why it is a core value, and even though we get into the size that we are now, it's remained a core value, is we don't want to lose that agility. Because whether it's our sales team who need to make a sale, so they need to be responsive for their partners and their customers to get answers on a particular decision making. I mean, we're sometimes a small product in a big scheme of transformation or digital transformation, or even just products that people are buying from, with some of our partners. We can't be slow. We can't be like, oh, we'll get back to you next week on that. And also from an innovative perspective, we want to be the first to market with the best that there is, what our customers need. And so every function within the business has to play ball on the same thing in HR. We've had a pandemic. So we have a pandemic. What are we going to do about it? How are we going to make our employees feel okay over this time? And that was quick. I mean, and I think what I found, reflecting a little bit on this topic is if you exercise that muscle and you get used to kind of making quick decisions and getting things, and you are agile and you are actually quick and flexible and all that, you actually get better at it. So when this happened, Veeam was kind of, I mean, it's extraordinary, Chris, how they approached it. It was like, okay, this is the case. Our CEO made a quick decision. He didn't have, a communication that was crafted for 14 days with everybody kind of giving their viewpoints. It was a very honest, authentic, clear message. Pardon?
From the heart.
From the heart, absolutely from the heart. I mean, I think that's one thing that I would say of our CEO, without question, is you can tell that he leads from the heart. And everybody just is like, I mean, from an HR perspective, I mean, my boss was incredible. He was like, okay, guys, he got the whole leadership team together, and he said, we've got to think about this is going to be this is big. We need to be prepared. What can we do, and how can we make life better for our employees? And that was one mission. And everything else went on hold. Everything else was a backseat. And we all put our heads together. And I'm so proud to be part of a company that actually, over that time, approached it like that. And yeah, I think our employees have been overwhelmed with the support that they've got from Veeam, whether it's the senior leaders, their own line managers, whether it's HR initiatives, everything. I think we all really kind of came together. And again, so it's that speed and that agility is so important, but you almost have to practice it for it to get good at it.
So true. It just becomes natural, doesn't it? And you don't second guess yourself. And I think that definitely means things move a lot faster. Now, in the world of employer branding, often my kind of mind goes to, okay, research phase can take a good few weeks, dare I say it, months times, long project plans and proposition developments, creative execution, and then deployment. Now, that for me kind of doesn't sit comfortably in a fast-paced world, and certainly in a fast-paced business like Veeam. So is this Veeam speed do you think it's kind of demanding more of a kind of an agile approach to employer branding than say other?
Definitely. I mean, I was thinking about this and how I have, as a professional, also adjusted my own style and my own approach, exactly what you were mentioning about how you would normally go about implementing something. And you kind of turn it on your head a little bit, and you think about it differently. I mean, if you go back to things like EVP development, content development, any of these things we talk about in this industry, I think my perspective on things now is completely different. I don't think you can over engineer it too much either. I think over engineering is something you lose. Firstly, it becomes a bit vanilla, but I think also it's put things out there and see what people like, learn through experience, through doing, versus like death by analysis. And I mean, Chris, you and I have worked on some of these projects in the past. We've been part of the teams that have put these plans together. So, I'm not saying there's not a time and a place for some of that thinking, but businesses nowadays are moving too quick. You can't have like a system in place where it has to go through 14 different people. I mean, exactly like I was just talking about our business earlier, it's the same for whether you're an agency or a supplier. You can't look at it in the same way anymore. It's too slow. It's not working anymore for businesses. You want to be able to be on the forefront, the pulse, make things happen quickly. And I think it's an interesting challenge for suppliers and agencies to how do they change their business model in order to be more reflective of what businesses are looking for, especially businesses like ours.
Yeah, kind of to use a technical terminology, it's like jumping out of the sandbox, isn't it? Really, because the sandbox is that kind of safe testing environment, and actually, what you need to do is you need to test it in the wild. And I think that's why sometimes often actually the likes of Google and Facebook, they get criticized because they've got rid of something that they only released like a few months or a couple of years ago. But actually they understand that you need to test it live. You cannot just procrastinate and get it tested internally as much as possible. You need to actually make it available to people to actually see how it performs. And I think taking that approach into employer branding is, I think,
Absolutely. And I think it's scary for some people because sometimes it might fail. But I mean, just the sort of there's a big thing there, which is just how people think about failure generally. I mean, it is a scary thing. I mean, nobody wants to put something out and get the wrong press or the wrong opinion, and it's misconstrued or didn't quite work. But I think there's also safer territory. I mean, when you're talking about things like this is a place to work, and it's kind of a little bit of a safer territory because it's your own view anyway. It's whether you're saying it to your friends in a pub or whether you're making a piece of content about it, it's ultimately your view on what it is like to be in a place like that. So it's different if you're misconstruing something or you have to have a serious moment where you maybe do need to be really considered. I'm not saying there's not a place for that thoughtfulness and that crafting and that time. But I think there's also a huge space and a huge opportunity that's been missed because it's been made to feel like every single thing needs to be overcrafted or overthought through, and I don't think that's the case.
I think the more that it's set up on a pedestal, the more concerned people get that it's doesn't work. They say with quote marks with my fingers, and I think actually it's just about using that time in the right way or at the right time. So getting something to use kind of to do what they do in the technology sphere, is that minimum viable product approach. Have you got something that you can put out there, test it, and then use that thinking later on as opposed to all up front to then enhance it, make it better, and respond to what's happening out there in the outside of the sandbox.
Absolutely. I mean, Chris, would you say from your side? I mean, you're on the side now. Obviously, a different type of supplier for companies. But do you think that an agile approach and a speed approach is something that is required from what you're hearing from other clients?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's the old classic thing. I think especially people in employer branding roles is doing more with less, and not having necessarily massive teams and having to call upon people to do things to help you out. And I think all this is kind of very much points towards needing something quickly.
Yeah.
It needs to be well thought out, but I think certainly that thing of speed, I think is very is very, very important. And I think from my experience and stuff I've been working on recently is that you can get things out quickly and get some really good data back to then inform what you do next. And I think it's really important to I think be working with people who are happy to take those kind of educated jumps, basically.
But I think that's also what's really special about the business that you're setting up now as well, in the sense of looking at it as you've got the brain to think about the strategy and the crafting of it, but it's also the execution and being able to sort of be the one-stop shop for that, but an agile way of doing it and an agile service, I think is something that's going to be really special and needed in the industry.
Well, that's certainly the plan, and that's I think I've talked about in previous episodes about of course coronavirus, and the 2020s is always going to be a decade where a lot of things change, but I think is a decade which is now kick-started by crisis, to use a bit of a phrase, but it's I think going to speed that up even more, where I think that agility I think is really, really important. And just kicking stuff out of the sandbox and just testing it,
Absolutely.
and making sure that actually there's that opportunity to change things quickly as well, and making that easy to do so, really. And organizations have you sit on a whole host of experiences through your people. You spoke to a lot of people, so you have a good understanding about what they're about. So
Yeah.
it's just the case of as you're doing at the moment, is bottling that in the right way and doing that internally as as much, if not more, than doing it externally.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly the approach. I mean, we talk about inside out marketing. What is the heartbeat? What is the feeling? What is the culture? What is it really like to work for a place? And being able to sort of put that in the hands of the best people to talk about it is going to be your employees. And I think where where it's going to get more and more interesting over time is, how do we harness that user generated content, and how do we kind of create that sort of that real empowerment of brand ambassadors and getting them to just authentically do it, but also kind of being able to put a little bit of arms around it just to sort of make it flow a little bit in the direction, just craft it that little bit more to make sure that it's kind of consistent around, how we put it out there. And I think there's a lot of businesses and a lot of ways that people are thinking about this in very interesting ways. And I've started to see, either whether it's a piece of technology or companies such as yours who are adapting to what the modern times need.
Yeah, I think, it's those little, I suppose, tricks that you maybe aren't obvious if you've not done it for a long time, or you don't do it a lot, is kind of looking at, well, okay, do we have to be creating all content from scratch? Let's look at video,
Yep.
and let's
Yep.
see how we can make the most of it. And it doesn't have to be just that one video. It can be obviously edits from that, serializations of those videos, but also turn that into static content as well. Saying the same thing but in a different way. And it's not necessarily, well, repetition isn't necessarily a bad thing, because you can't assume that everyone sees all of your content.
Absolutely.
As much as you'd love that, because you're so close to yourself, and I do it myself sometimes, you think, well, I've spent time on this, so of course everyone's going to be as attentive to it as I am. Well, they're not. They're busy doing other things, so the competition of life, scrolling for that news feed vertically or horizontally, is there's a lot of noise out there. So I think repetition is important, but doing it in different ways, I think, is entirely possible. So
I mean, absolutely. It goes back to also some of the basic A/B testing. You can put an article out with two different sort of headings or headlines to sort of grab attention, and amazingly, they will get very different results. You put something out at a different time of the day, it gets different results. So exactly to your point, sometimes it is about just maybe crafting it slightly differently or having a different angle on it. yeah, reusing it, rethinking about it. I think there's so many different ways to be clever about this. And I think you're right. I think repetition is only repetition if you've really consumed it properly the first time. Otherwise, it's a reminder. Just it's still the case.
And even if someone's watched a video, but then there's something which is taking an element of that video, whether it's written or shorter video content, is I suppose emphasizing that point, and someone go, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I can, yeah, that's something I can empathize with, or something I can aspire to, or something that just rings true to who I am as a person, which is really what authenticity is about. So should we just finish off with I'd like to kind of give our listeners something that they can maybe take to in one of their next meetings. So imagine we've got a employer branding meeting, talent attraction meeting, and they have an agenda. Should we put some stuff on that agenda? Things that they should be covering off. What do you want to start off?
Let me have a think. I think one definitely a theme we've spoken about, but one to think about is create an environment where there is a bit more empowerment to just make it happen, and be quick around how you make it happen. Find a model or a way to allow your organization or your model, or however it is that you're doing something today. Think about ways that you can be a bit more streamlined and agile, and empowered to put things out there. I'm not saying that that's going to work necessarily for every business, but even the biggest corporations and even the biggest business, how do you make that model, your operational model, really, really streamlined, is definitely something I think would benefit everybody. But also, again, it's around, protecting and giving the space for your employees to be able to be your brand ambassadors, and for them to feel comfortable enough that they can put things out there. And maybe they might not get it right every single time. And how can you support them through that? But don't let them stop trying, and don't put them off completely by being too rule-tastic about it. But I think also for people in, agencies and suppliers and everything, I would say that we need to kind of rethink our models a little bit and how we do business with companies. Because I think, again, and I've complimented you on your business model. I think that sort of thing for the future is going to be what companies really need. I think storytelling and content, of course, is still king. I think it's the most important thing that will talk about your brand and get people to truly understand what it's like to work there. But I don't think it's about super polished, crafted pieces. I think sometimes, yes, there's places for that. There's absolutely places for that. But let it come from the people that are actually living and breathing it every single day. Let it come from your people.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, I think there's something there where take the kind of agile thinking, maybe a version of a design sprint type thinking there, which is, in that meeting, or maybe put a date in the diary for the follow-up meeting, which is, let's actually do something. Let's have a session to actually build something here and now. Yeah, it's, you could like take a, there'll be a few people, handful of people that people in that meeting will know that would be absolutely fantastic ambassadors for the organization, or are fantastic ambassadors for the organization. So let's think about them, and let's actually, come up with some ideas for content there and then in that meeting.
Absolutely. And then it's also about staying close to the pulse of maybe some trending topics at any given time. Because if you could sort of connect your brand ambassadors with some trending topics, and that kind of connects your brand as well, that's almost like the trio of this perfect mesh together. And yeah, I think more and more, if there are barriers as to why people might not feel comfortable to do it, how can you either hold their hand through it and offer them support there, or how can you kind of give them the a little bit of a clarity of direction or boundaries. And it's not about rule making. It's just about, okay, you feel a bit uncomfortable saying something. Well, have you thought about it like that? And okay, you don't really know what to talk about. What about talking about something like this? You've got to, so it's yeah, I think protecting people through that journey, but definitely doing everything in your power to encourage it, because that's where the sweet spot is with content, with authentic content.
Definitely. And I think often just giving people a bit of a nudge, but then just let them talk, and just audio, audio can be a great way of just then lots of content, whether it's audio content or written content. It's just to give people a few prompts, but just let them chat. I mean, Ange, you could create, not that I have the time for my own stuff as much as I do for that, but there would be a whole host of pieces of content that you could create off the back of this chit chat, that's for sure. And you're committing, a bit of time on a Friday morning.
No, I think it's I mean, I'm a huge audio person at the moment. I think it's my preferred medium of anything. So I am it's great to be able to come and do something like this. And even for myself, I mean, I'm in this is my job, this is my profession. But if somebody asks me to write something or asks me to join a podcast like this, it's not a comfort spot. It's not something that I'm really, totally cool with that. I think I'm going to be brilliant. It's actually for me personally, and I'm in the industry, it's quite nerve-wracking. But it's also about,
Ange, at all. Just feels like a chat to me.
No, it does, but that's the whole point, is that you put it in the right hands and the right medium. It does feel like a chat. It feels like I'm talking to my friend Chris, who I've known for years, and we've got very similar industry background, and it's easy. So how do you recreate that for your own employees to feel as comfortable and safe as this sort of environment, and get them to keep doing, writing on behalf of the business, and why it's such a great place to be.
I think getting, see, kind of when you can show somebody something else that's been done by one of their colleagues, and then I think they become more comfortable, and they understand the kind of the steps, or the simple steps that are required to actually get to that point. I've done it before, doing like Zoom calls, and to start with, those Zoom calls have been okay, but they've got better because you've then had something saying we want to do something like this, but we found a better way of getting content, and we got better content from it. So I think getting those, the classic thing of finding people in the organization that can be great champions for it, and sharing the content that they've done, then people can get an idea about what that would look like, and that actually it isn't a difficult process or a stressful process to go through. It just
can also just experiment enough to play with the medium that you feel most comfortable with. I mean, we've got some amazing people in our business who can present. I mean, they present in huge halls, big stadiums, and they're brilliant at it. And then you've got people that maybe are just better at writing something. They don't really want to talk about it. And some people who are better at maybe the audio. And again, it's about finding the right medium that makes people feel comfortable, that we think is going to be the sort of the best way to get that story across. So I think may we continue to strive to get the real content out there, because ultimately, if you think about it, I mean, and Chris, we've spoken about this purpose that we have as in our own jobs, is if we do that right, you could literally connect people with amazing careers.
Exactly.
And if we can do that right, that for us is a huge sense of purpose. And we don't want to waste anyone's time, whether it's the businesses or by getting that story wrong, or by making it not truthful or not authentic, and not letting people know the good and the bad that they might be walking into, then we're wasting everybody's time.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I think that's time now. Thanks for the time, Ange. It's been really good to chat with you.
Always a pleasure, Chris, and I hope you've got some valuable nuggets there. And it's a pleasure as always, and all the very best with your business venture. I think it's a fantastic model, and I'm looking forward to working with you in the future.
Cheers, Ange. Thanks a lot. Have a good weekend, yeah.
You too.
Take care.
Take
Bye.
care. All the best. Bye.
Thanks for listening, and don't forget to follow or subscribe for the latest episode drops. And don't forget to get in touch if you want to contribute.